to our service. Today is Sunday, April 26th. I have a few announcements this morning. You can access our service on the website after the service, and you can also access the service on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in doing that, please do so. Just a reminder of our programs for the week. On Wednesdays at 7 o'clock in the evening, we have a guided meditation. On Thursdays, we have a coffee talk where we can all see and hear one another and chat with one another. That's at 11 a.m. on Thursdays. And on Sunday, after the service, you can join the staff for coffee hour. And all of this is on Zoom. We're adding a program starting this Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning. We'll be having a listening circle on Zoom. So this is a little bit different than our normal chats. The listening circle will be facilitated by myself, and each person gets a chance to talk as we go around the circle, or whomever is on Zoom. So it's a more structured chat. So please join us for that and watch your email for the happenings that comes to you each week. We have a change in the order of service. If you are following along this morning, I have moved the sound for silence and meditation to after the chalice lighting. So just so you know. Also, if you have joys and sorrows and would like those named during our service each Sunday, you can contact me via email, phone, and share your joys and your sorrows, and I will be glad to share them with the congregation. Remember that this is a very public platform when you're sharing. At All Faiths, we'd like you to know that no matter who you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and no matter whom you love, you are always welcome here. So please join in singing, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Please join in the words that are printed in your order of service as I light the chalice. As we light this chalice, let us recognize this symbol of our faith that is alive in this world, naming our vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community. Each Sunday when we are together, we share with the congregation our joys and sorrows, and we still have that opportunity while we're apart. During this time, I will name some joys and sorrows that have been sent to me, and we will share silence. Some joys and sorrows this morning. We have one from Wheezy Close. She tells us that her son has graduated medical school, but that is both it's a double-edged sword. They're blessed that he finally graduated, but he's going to Chicago to begin working in a hospital almost immediately. So hold him and his family in your hearts. I received a message from Nicole and Jennifer McGregor this morning. Their daughter Quillen is not doing well, and they're very concerned. And they appreciate all the cards and support you have been giving them, and please hold them in your hearts. And now let us share a few moments of silence.
Tell me I am just an outcast. I shouldn't speak to you. Still I see your face and wonder, were you once an outcast too? Hungry from birth, show them the mercy they don't find on earth. The lost and forgotten, they look to you still. God help the outcasts, or nobody will. I ask for nothing, I can get by, but I know so many less lucky than I. God help the outcasts, the poor and the downtrodden. I thought we all were the children of God. I don't know if there's a reason why some are blessed, some not. Why the few you seem to favor, they fear us, flee us, try not to see us. God help the outcasts, the tattered, the torn, seeking the answer to why
Thank you, Joseph. I had forgotten one announcement that Joseph has a CD that is available to you. So if you'd like to own one of his CDs, please contact Joseph. Don't contact the office or the minister, but please contact Joseph. Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend Chris Jimerson. I reach for my fullest potential in a world that pits my fullest potential against yours. Together we can all better reach out for our full potential. I am taught to fear difference. By embracing our differences, we learn to grow and we may be transformed. And the privileges I have been given, the power to oppress, leaves me trapped within those same systems of oppression. Collectively, we can change those systems that liberate us all. Racism, sexism, classism, radical capitalism, gender and sexuality biases, religious bigotries, these conspire together to bind us all into silos of spiritual emptiness. Together we can burst through these silos of disconnection and journey together toward wholeness and holiness. And so come, let us enter into this journey together. Together we celebrate our collective vision of beloved community. Together we build that vision. It is good to be together.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like the waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like the waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land, building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring the ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like the waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand your people. Oh, come build the land, my people, we sing. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like the waters, and
Joseph's enthusiasm to bring us our hymn, but now let me offer the reading that I was meant to offer before the hymn. We're all family here. When we are engaged in acts of love, we humans are at our best and most resilient. The love in romance that makes us want to be better people, the love of children that makes us want to change our whole lives to meet their needs, the love of family that makes us drop everything to take care of them, the love of community that makes us work tirelessly with broken hearts. Perhaps humans' core function is love. Love leads us to observe in a much deeper way than any other emotion. If love were the central practice of this new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact. If the goal was to increase the love rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential. We would understand that the strength of our movement is the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. Scaling up would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable, being more empathetic. And so ends the reading. American social justice activist Chris Krass, say that fast 5 times, Chris Krass says that he feels like everything he says and writes these days begins and ends within these times. Surely we are all feeling the pain, the grief, and the trauma and isolation in these times. On top of our fear and anxiety in these times, we have been handed an additional burden from the federal government level to people in the streets offering violence and dangerous narcissism. That is the burden of battling for security, safety, and our collective health. In 2007, I started working with the United Nations Women's Human Rights Network. And it was then that I met my first real Swami. And before then, my only notion of a Swami was that of Bugs Bunny. And do you remember when Bugs was a Swami and he asked the guy if he wanted his palm red, and the man put his hand out and he painted it with red paint? And his name was Swami Agnavesh. And I'm introducing him to you because he said something to me that I've held on to all of these years. In fact, what he said is the reason why I love Unitarian Universalism and will always hold this faith close. The Swami said, if one of us is not free, none of us are free. This phrase wasn't new to me, having heard it before, but I had never heard it while looking in the eyes of a Hindu religious spiritual teacher. This was a transcendent experience for me. Another hero of mine is Nelson Mandela, who said, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that rejects and enhances the freedom of others. To live in a way that enhances the freedom of others. This tells us that our freedom is inextricably intertwined. I'm clinging on to the wisdom of those two people, teachers, in these times. The disagreement of how to move forward through this pandemic is heating up. Protesters armed with rifles and misspelled signs are enraged that they are being asked to stay home, for their safety and the safety of others. No matter your feelings about these protesters, they have a right to do what they are doing. Why they need to do it with rifles, violence, and spitting in the faces of nurses is beyond me. Yeah, they have the right to protest, but if your right to protest endangers my life and the people that I love, you no longer are exercising your rights. Exercising your rights that cause pain, injury, illness, and that are threatening to the good of all. If you are doing this, exercising your rights in this way, you are not doing it correctly. This brings us to the idea of collective liberation. If one of us is not free, then none of us are free. Collective liberation means recognizing that all of our struggles are intimately connected. All of our struggles are intimately connected, and that we must work together to create the kind of world that we know is possible. We believe that every person is worthy of dignity and respect, and that within systems of oppression, everyone suffers. So fueling this divisiveness is our president, who says there is a sufficient amount of tests being conducted to reopen the economy. The states disagree. In Maryland and Virginia, governors said stay-at-home orders would stay in effect and would have to remain in effect until those states show a sign in decreases in the number of COVID-19 cases. And elsewhere in the nation, state officials said they would need to conduct far more testing before easing restrictions and continue to face shortages of supplies and testing kits. So a battle also brews over liberation. Liberation tweets such as, "Liberate Virginia," "Liberate Minnesota," "Liberate Michigan," tweets from our president. Despite saying that he would allow governors to make their own decisions on when to reopen their economies, our president called on Minnesota, Virginia, and Michigan to liberate their economies. For starters, it is not up to the president to allow states to make their own decisions. Rather, states get to make their own decisions, period. Second, after that presumptuous power grab, the president incited residents of those states to defy their governors. And this notion of liberation does not satisfy our demand for collective liberation, liberation for us all together as a collective. This notion of liberation is dangerous, divisive, destructive, and irresponsible. Liberate, particularly when it's declared by the chief executive of our republic, isn't some sort of sassy off-the-cuff statement. Its definition is to set at liberty, specifically to free something, such as a country from domination from a former power. We historically associate it with the armed defeat of hostile forces during war, such as the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi Germany's control during World War II. Insurrection or treason against the state government is a crime in Virginia, Michigan, and Minnesota, as well as most states. Assembling with others to train or practice using firearms or other explosives for use during a civil disorder is also a crime in our country. But the president himself is calling for just that. Regardless of whether the tweets are criminal on their own, more importantly, they are irresponsible and they are dangerous. Collective liberation is not just a value, but it is an action. And when we work together across the barriers kept in place to divide us, we strengthen our organizing. When combined, our diverse identities and experiences give us the tools to dismantle systems of economic, political, and social oppression, and to create a world in which all people are seen as fully human. So how does our current dilemma measure up to collective liberation? How do we ground our justice work, our struggles against racism, oppression, and the destruction of our environment? Where do we find reliance, and where do we find joy? As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put it, we are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. This is the interrelated structure of reality. He writes, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things, he says, in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love, he says. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means, and we shall hew out despair with out of a stone of hope. Community organizer Derek Cooper tells us, as part of our liberation, the earth teaches us that everything is connected, as per our seventh principle. The soil needs rain, organic matter, air, worms, and life in order to do what it needs to give and receive life. And each element is an essential component. She says, organizing takes humility and selflessness and patience and rhythm, while our ultimate goal of liberation will take many expert components. Some of us build and fight for land, healthy bodies, healthy relationships, clean air, water, homes, safety, dignity, and humanizing education. Other of us fight for food and political prisoners and abolition and environmental justice. Our work is intersectional and multifaceted. And nature teaches us that our work has to be nuanced and steadfast. And more than anything, that we need each other. We need each other at our highest natural glory in order to be free. We are all tired. We are all lonely, all experiencing the devastation of this pandemic on some level. The reality is that we must eventually liberate our economy to avoid near-apocalyptic times. That's just a reality. We must liberate our economy eventually and in a measured way to cure the devastating homelessness, starvation, and unemployment that will curse us. Again, that's our reality. And again, our liberation must be measured, and it must be safe. I'm not interested in hearing how some will benefit and some will die, but I am interested in how we can collectively move forward where we are all considered. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together, says Lila Watson, who is an Aboriginal activist. I am a Unitarian Universalist. You are a Unitarian Universalist with these beliefs. Liberation means recognizing all the trauma, the oppression and human struggle as connected, and the truth that working together is a way to implement the world we want to live in, is a way to liberate ourselves collectively. We have to be willing to recognize the greatness within each of ourselves, the beauty that we are of the earth. We hold our own sacredness and the instinct to heal, the instinct to transform, and the instinct to change. We all have a role in this creation, and when we each understand the complexity and vulnerability to sit with our humanness, we have the courage and capacity to be ourselves with those walking beside us. No act of resistance is completely independent of another. No act of resistance is completely independent of another. We must be courageous and rise in these times, and without violence in the streets. We must rise with our vision, our values, our communities, our courage for collective liberation. And collective liberation emphasizes the importance of maintaining conscious decision-making capacity and practicing active consent. We want everyone to be free, to be safe, to be healthy, to be considered, because if one of us isn't, none of us shall have freedom. May it be so. When we are together before the offertory, I always offer a joke, and our joke today comes from Shell Point. So here it is, and if you don't like it, don't get angry with me. Call me and I'll tell you who gave it to me. What do you call two brothers that were born within minutes of each other and both like the 7.5 ounce cans of Pepsi? You call them Minnesota twins. That was bad. We are grateful for your contributions and your donations that keep our ability to be in the community and our staff working for you, serving you, alive.
Many
The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and that liberate others. That action is the testimony of love as the practice of freedom. Blessed be. Please join in the words that are printed in your order of service as I extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world.